Hello folks, it is me, I'm Biggie, and I'm back, and welcome to an episode of Patches and Peeves. We have a lot to cover today, so I'm gonna make things quick. We have Elektra in the new PvP lockbox. We have Bishop and PvP Season 10. We have changes to PvP Season 10, as well as we've got Angel's newest uniform to cover. So there's a lot to cover, so let's get started. Let's get started with the fact that we are now at Season 10 of PvP, and there are now different teams you could choose for attacking and defending. The changelog actually says that there's separate loadouts for missions and PvP, and there are offensive and defensive team choices. So what this means is that, hooray, we no longer have to worry that while we're playing player versus enemy, that our team is gonna be like in like super weak and stuff. We can even pick different heroes and different gears and different uniforms for heroes, and that's pretty nice. Not pretty nice is understating it. That's pretty amazing. I mean, these guys, like, you could pick a nice defending team and focus heavily on defense. I mean, you could have like Omega Sentinel, you can have Phoenix here, you know, you could have White Crown Infiltrator Phoenix. I almost said Phoenix. Oh, I said Phoenix. And you know, we've got an agent that could be focused on revival. You know, all that good stuff. You know, like you could have a super annoying defensive team. You know, with lots of revivals. You could have a super powerful combo team that you were afraid to use before because you might actually get countered in that particular time that you're going to go, you know, kaboom and kill everybody in one instance. And that's pretty amazing. That's very good. That's what I enjoy. This is a very good change in my honest opinion, in my humble opinion. It's gonna really change the scene of how PvP is actually being played. And according to the changelog, you will also have a change in the opponent selection. So once we go into the tournament fight here, we click this. Even with practice, if you go to practice, you'll see that the choice of opponents will be of a wider range if the practice button works. Ay. Okay. The game decides to freeze on me? Yes? No? Yeah. Yeah, the practice button doesn't work. Never mind that. Okay, so if you decide to go to practice, no, not practice, there's going to be changes in opponent selection, but there's more opponent variety. Well, does that mean that there's going to be a bigger range of scores in the game? I don't know. But that might be a good thing, might be a bad thing. So we'll have to see how that goes in this PvP season. The game has been updated. Brilliant! My internet connection has pooped out, so might as well finish this off with looking at the patch notes on this website, shall we? So, last but not least are the rewards, which is Tactician's Aegis Armor. Oh yeah, of course, they've removed the points gained the opponents would get if combat validation occurs while attacking. You know, it's topical. So combat validation might occur, you might get disconnected, and while you're attacking and you get disconnected, your opponent will no longer gain the points. You might lose points, I'm not sure if that's going to happen, but opponents will definitely not gain points if you get a combat validation error during their attacks. That is also nice. I'm not sure if this is going to encourage people to cheat or not. It might. But people's always been cheating on this game, so I don't care. Right. Anyways, PvP Season 10 rewards. You're gonna get a Tactician's Aegis Armor. Yep. Reload this. Tactician's Aegis Armor. And yeah, my internet connection's tuckered out, so I need to look things up a little bit later. Where single target attacks have 50% chance to apply Psychic Lock and Exhausted. Exhausted is pretty good, but Psychic Lock is amazing. Your opponent can only pick and choose one action. That is pretty awesome in and of itself. So yeah, that is something we need to look forward to. This is a pretty impressive prize, to say the least. Then we have the item, which is called Emerald Prism's Glow, or Emerald Prism as the item. For this PvP season. It's actually, while active, it's a single target, targets one ally, and while active, beneficial effects are not removed by enemy attacks or harmful status effects. So this is going to be pretty good for teams focused on increasing boons. So, or, you know, buffing the Vampire Slayer. Nobody at my age range will know who Buffy the Vampire Slayer is. Anyways, Emerald, this will work with teams with, you know, Wonder Man, Thundra. I've talked about this extensively in my Angel review. You know, teams with Angel. Yeah, so it's gonna be pretty amazing. It's good choice. Good choice. All right, so while I get my internet fixed up, we'll talk then about Bishop and then Elektra. So see you guys in a bit. All right, let us start talking about Bishop. Bishop right here is what I call one of those semi-blockers. What I mean by semi-blockers, it blocks some of the time, protects your characters some of the time. Think Wolverine and Nightcrawler. They jump in at certain times and they don't at certain other times. I'm not a big fan of these types of characters because characters like this usually are pretty unreliable on the defensives, and they work on teams that don't have a specific blocker. But if your teams has a specific blocker, aka somebody like Rescue, you know, you are going to suffer a lot from him just kind of jumping in instead of having your blocker or tank take the damage. So that is one of his weaker points, you know. But what I mean is that by semi-blocker, he actually jumps in and takes extra turns from kinetic, energy, psychic, and elemental attacks. And we say, wow, okay, so what's kinetic, what's energy, what's psychic, and what's elemental? There's a ton of stuff. There's a ton of stuff that actually has this. So I've been doing some research, and for example, kinetic refers to attacks by Bishop himself, of course, and when he was unleashed, but mostly by Gambit. So Bishop's here to kind of counter Gambit because Gambit's always here in PvP right now. But yeah, he's pretty interesting. There's some enemies that actually does, and there's no enemies that actually has kinetic energy. Only certain heroes do. So, you know, not very useful. You know, just kind of toss aside. Maybe you'll see him in the future where enemies use kinetic energy. Who knows? But that's besides the point. Energy, however, is a more nearly all heroes have use energy. Look at this: Magic, Magneto, Ms. Marvel, Iron Man, Human Torch, Havoc, Doctor Strange, Cable, Omega Sentinel, Phoenix, Rescue, Scarlet Witch, Storm, Thor, Vision, War Machine, and yeah, tons of enemies use energy attacks. Tons of enemies also use psychic attacks: Cable, Ghost Riders, Phoenix, and Psylocke, and electric attacks. And elementals attack includes electric, fire, and ice. So there's Constrictor, Hawkeye, in his other arrows. Actually, let's skip Hawkeye. Constrictor, Omega Sentinel, Storm, Thor, Valkyrie. Fire attacks is everywhere: Ghost Rider, Human Torch, Omega Sentinel, Phoenix, Red Hulk. He pretty much just has is just anti-Omega Sentinel to a certain degree, because he could deal with all these. Excuse me, you know, here Storm with her ice attack. He could deal with a lot of the elemental attacks, a lot of these energy attacks, and he's just basically a pain to attack against, you know, because he keeps protecting against this kind of stuff. And what he does is once he takes half damage from it and protects against it, and he gains potential energy when attacked by kinetic, energy, or psychic elemental attacks. As you can see here, he has a ton of health, a ton of attack, a ton of defenses, particular like any good bruiser should have, low evasion, low accuracy like any good bruiser should have. Actually, typical of a bruiser, that's what I wanted to say. And the potential energy is used to unlock his higher skills. So let's look at his skills. Let's start off with his normal skills. He has Headhunter, which is the tech attack, which has Lock On, which makes the opponent take additional range from ranged attacks. And he has a Boon Buster, so deals increased damage to targets through Strength, Fortified, Focus, Agile, Shield, or Regen effects. So all the stuff that you expect from boon-based attack, you know, boon-based team. Yeah. Rising Up, that's what I wanted to say. Over here we've got Cyberkinetic Crash, which is a pretty cool skill. He has potential energy that unlocks increased power actions under focus energy and redirect energy. This thing also has what's called obsolete technology, which prevents technology attacks and slows metal targets. This is very, very useful in certain PvE missions, I have to say. Very, very good in player versus enemy. As for, it has very limited use on in player versus enemy PvP. That's what I meant. Very limited use in PvP. You're only talking about Cable, Phantom X, and Iron Man, and these guys aren't like A-game PvP material, so you don't have to expect to be able to use this a lot in PvP. But it's one of the only things that actually has potential energy, so you have to remind yourself of that. And let's go over Dead or Alive first, which means he gets tech upgrade. What this skill does, if the mouse point is going to cooperate. Doesn't look like it's going to cooperate. Alright, what it actually does after some research is it increases the damage of tech attacks, which is useful on Bishop because he actually deals damage as tech attacks. But the important thing is he actually, if it gives it to his allies, that will make for some interesting strategy, like he could work with Iron Man and such. Weak point actually means next attack is guaranteed to hit and crit, so that's pretty amazing. But this being said, his important aspect is that once you get one potential energy, you could focus whatever potential energy you have and change yourself into your focus actions using your level 6 skill. So once you do that, you have what's called Concussive Blast, which is basically a ranged kinetic attack on one enemy, which consumes all potential energy, does tons of damage. Has full potential, gains realized potential for each stack of potential energy. He boosts himself, increases all of his stats. I'm not sure how much of his stats is actually raised, but it's a pretty interesting choice. But this is not a free action either, so I don't know how strong he becomes once he releases all of his inner force. But that being said, he has things like channel energy, which, you know, after getting all that, he unleashes all of his potential energy, consumes all potential energy, and he just releases all of it on all enemies. So it might be this might be a very, very powerful attack. And here we have accelerated healing, which targets himself, heals himself, and restores health when applied, removes harmful status effects, restores health over time for X rounds. X is potential on target, so he's got a lot. The thing about Uncanny Bishop is that he's pretty impressive bruiser. Not the he's actually, as a semi-blocker, it could like intervene with opponents' plans a lot. You know, he could just jump in against opponents' scrappers, whereas Wolverine will jump in against opponents' tacticians and just go rah 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 grr. And he has a certain way of things. He just uses he has a lot of the Boon Buster kind of lock-on type stuff. He's very difficult to use because he's got a lot of skills that he could use, and he works as a kind of a semi-tank. He does have healing options. I mean, and he does have a kind of like potential increasing his strengths to immense proportions, and then just releasing all of it, or doing damage. He's just kind of like jack of all trades. I'm not sure how well his damage is going to be unless he's facing scrappers. So we have to see if Bishop is going to be really, really good or really, really kind of meh. You know, right now my opinion on him is he's kind of meh. He's not like built specifically for any purpose. He's very, very good for multi-purpose type deal. He might turn out to he might turn out to be another Cable. Yeah, I mean, Cable's very good, but he's just kind of too much of a jack of all trades to be able to deal with all things properly. That being said, though, I haven't used him yet, so take this with a grain of salt. You have to see if this actually will he turn out to be amazing or not. But not nearly as amazing as I consider the next hero. Oh yes, this is what I'm talking about. Hello, classic Elektra. Look at what you've got. You've got Master Assassin, which has a chance to perform a preemptive counterattack against melee attacks and avoids attacks that are countered this way. So, opponents with melee deals, Iron Fists, I'm calling you in particular, you are in for a treat if you're going to attack Classic Elektra. She's going to jump in and slice you and avoid that attack. So, pretty impressive. However, she is not a dedicated defensive character, which means that she will, unless you have her with somebody who could, protect or give her an ability to protect. This is a relatively kind of like don't be stupid kind of skill. It's actually a very, very useful skill against scrappers, because lots and lots of scrappers do melee attacks. So if you scrappers jump in to attack, she just avoids it and slices and gives your opponent lots of bleedy bleeds. Yes. We have Way of the Stick, which makes all of Elektra's attacks permanently stealthy, does not trigger counter attacks, does not trigger potential protect abilities. That in and of itself makes her amazing in this heavy protection heavy environment. Imagine having her jump in and slice in tacticians. That is just, she doesn't even need to do that. I mean, she's just already very, very powerful, and she already kind of counters attacks. So, that being said, let's look at her abilities, right? Let's start off with Heavy Size. This is with an attack that's going to have actually you're going to counter enemy attacks with. It's a hemorrhaging attack. So it's a hemorrhaging attack. So what actually this means is that your opponents, if they have bleed, you're going to counter attack with an item that triggers a hemorrhage. That is pretty broken. She's gonna probably need to be fixed sooner rather than later. But seriously, it's you could jump in and hemorrhage an enemy, and Elektra's bleed cause something called internal bleeding, right? Internal bleeding is, I think, stacks separately from bleeding, yeah. And actually, I'm not sure if this works with exploit bleeds or bleeding type stuff. If this actually stacks with bleeding, this will be broken. Every bleeding team needs her. And so, an important thing about internal bleeding is that it's a debuff that cannot be removed. If you remember fighting her in her as her with an epic boss, this internal bleeding cannot be removed. So you could clear up debuffs as much as you like, do whatever. This thing is sticking on the opponent for 3 rounds no matter what. So that in itself is amazing. Her level 2 is called Ancient Art. Of course it is stealthy, they all are. It actually gives wide open and flanked. So if that's a tactician that gives opponent a flanked attack, not only that, does wide open and internal bleeding. Yes, this is just amazing. Just looking around all this stuff just makes her really, really amazing. Next up is Rain of Blood, probably my favorite. Yes, this grants Ravaged on all enemies, causes internal bleeding on all enemies, and most importantly, it causes Hobbled. Hobbled makes it so that attacks cannot be stealthy. What that would mean that if you have opponents that are tacticians and you have a blocker, a designated blocker, your opponent's attacks are not coming through. This is, as annoying as it is to have stealthy opponents forcing your way through your defenses, not anymore. She's gonna hobble all your opponents, and then you're gonna be able to counterattack everything. So if you're in a team with a counterattacker, counterattack hero set up with the Rain of Blood on all enemies, with Hobbled on all enemies, you are gonna have fun times. Especially if you have an agent with Saber-Tooth Claws, Sinister Scepter, and a protection item. You're just going to have lots and plenty of fun times ahead. Yeah. Last but not least is Assassinate. She is another character with Brutal Strike. This is a stealthy Brutal Strike. That in and of itself should be self-explanatory. You could actually Brutal Strike, hit your opponent, and you actually do Fatal Blow against them. Your opponent cannot be resurrected. So, that being said, I think Classic Elektra is a must-have on all bleed teams. She is amazing. Um, and she is going to be a game changer. I'm going to expect to see her change the game of bleed teams, and that is really that's all there is to it. You know, classic Elektra, simple, simple kind of beautiful like bleed type stuff. It's yeah, and I mean. Master this that she's gonna get retooled. There's no way that she's gonna be kept like this. And if she is, I'm using her next season. If I get her. No, what am I talking about? I will get her, of course. But yeah, this is a little bit too broken for my liking. Yeah, that being said, yeah, I am a fan. I am an Elektra fan. Electric fan? Sorry, that was horrible. Anyways, last bit of the update. Angel. Here we have Angel in his newest uniform, and I've gotta say, it's a complete like retool of his skills. I've never seen a complete retool of skills. Usually the skills are relatively similar, and of course this is Archangel, or Fallen Angel as people would like to call him. He still has techno-organic wings that makes him immune to ground and the ability to avoid attacks. He still has abysmal attack damage, which is not good for this particular build. So he has a high evasion, high accuracy, I know, but he also has a new ability called Echelon. Eschaton. Eschaton? Yeah. Gains health and stamina whenever an enemy or ally is defeated. Oh, wow. So this actually makes him very concentrated on killing single targets. It works so well in teams that deals with single targets. And I have to say though, I'm not a big fan of this particular build, this particular setup. I'll tell you why. First off, this is an offensive character with low attack. That should say a lot, right? I love his flavor, though. I mean, all of his 4 skills are named after the 4 horsemen of the apocalypse. You know, war, pestilence, famine, and death. But really, a lot of his attacks. I mean, look at this. Starving, so hungry. Yeah, this is a reference to Shawarma, of course. But yes, we have war, which is a deadly crit attack that has causes pain. Melee unarmed though, so it's pretty interesting that it is melee and unarmed. Not a lot. There's some combos that could be had there, but it is a deadly crit, and that's all you have for it. Yeah, and he's not a higher damage character. Yeah, okay. Let's move on to Pestilence. This deals damage to one enemy. It's a ranged slashing attack. It has Nanoplague. Nanoplague, though, is pretty interesting because it removes and prevents a lot of debuffs, and it is a poison skill. So, yeah, well, I'm interested to see how this thing works out on a character, on a PvP character. So, if I Nanoplague, will I remove most of the boons? What kind of skills will I remove? There's no specific saying that what beneficial statuses are being prevented. Yeah, it just says most. So we'll see how that turns out. If this is the case that you can actually prevent statuses while poisoning them, it will be a pretty interesting skill in and of itself. Next up is Famine. Famine here is what actually makes it kind of worthwhile to get this version of Angel, because it has Despair, which removes and prevents resurrection effects while it's active. So kind of a counter to the other Angel, which actually adds and creates resurrection effects. Yeah, it has Despair, and not only that, it has Brutal Strike. It has 2 specific skills that deal with resurrection effects. You're making sure your opponent is not being resurrected, and that is pretty important, I guess. I don't know. These things don't. None of these skills have cooldown, so I don't know why he needs 2 skills that actually deals with resurrection effects. That being said, though, we have a Brutal Strike, Fatal Blow type attack stuff here. I'm not sure. Yeah, his skills kind of like not make has a lot of flavor. It doesn't make a lot of sense between Famine and Death to have resurrection effects on lots of things. But let's see now. He has what's called, well, let's see his options. He could either be Scrapper or Blaster. If he was Scrapper, he would be doing lots of follow-up attacks on enemies with pain and causing lots and lots of pain on enemies, which is interesting, I guess. You know, you could like cause despair on opponents and then bring them pain, you know, and like have them die from your pains. I don't know. I'm still very iffy about him being a poor attacker, you know. Same with Blaster. He could crit, but he's still gonna have poor attack. Actually, a Blaster with deadly crit is gonna be pretty interesting as well. I'm yet to be able to see how well this character turns out, but I think out of the 3 newest characters, I think he is the weakest one. I mean, he is a newer uniform. I would prefer his older Angel, because he is actually more inclined to work on a very specific, very useful team. But I mean, having 2 resurrection to deal 2 skills to deal with resurrection effects is pretty nice. And if you shift him to buy I would actually buy his Blaster uniform, because a guaranteed deadly crit attack will still be damaging regardless of how much attack damage you have. So that being said, yeah, I think that's pretty much it for this particular episode of Patches and Peeves. See you guys next time. Did I miss anything? I think I missed a little bit of the bug fixes. You know, brute weapon no longer applies psychosis. What? Okay, applies buff blocker instead. All right, so that's fine. No, keep that in mind. Fix some animation issues. Hellstorm, to crowbar, music on and off stuff. Challenge point now regenerates once every 30 minutes instead of like every 20 like the last season. So yeah, improvements on music and stuff. Yeah, that is fine and dandy. I think that is all the change logs that we have right now. And yeah, if you want a summary, Elektra is pretty amazing. Bishop's kind of okay. And Angel's kind of okay. What we'll have to see between Angel and Bishop, if they're going to turn out amazing or not. Classical Elektra is already amazing at first glance, though. So, that being said, this is me, I'm Biggie, and I'll be back next time with more Patches and Peeves. What'll be in the next episode? I don't know. Probably some of the stuff I promised that I was going to do a long time ago. Damon Hellstrom, Satana, all that stuff. If the game didn't keep updating, you know, and having me watch the PvP and all this.